Hey guys, what's going on again? It's me, Jay. Here to again talk about more wrestling news. I didn't want to include this wrestling news in the other video that I did. Seems like so much wrestling news going on in the past few days. Not only the 2 days of WrestleMania, but then this merger, and then everything. But in the midst, the results, the fallout from that WrestleMania, all that. But in this one, I wanted to pay tribute to one of WWE's fallen legends, Bushwhacker Butch, a legendary member of the legendary team, the Bushwhackers, that were a huge part of my childhood. That he's passed away today at the age of 78. Um, he was part of my childhood, late 80s, early 90s, that sweet spot that kids from my era loved, the era when to be a WWE fan was just so fun. A WWF fan at that time was just so fun. And the Bushwhackers added to that fun. They would come down the aisle, they would go, right? They would do their thing and they would lick fans' faces. They were part of that kiddie ambiance that made WWE special during those formative years. Now, memories of mine that stick out from them, events I remember, their short Royal Rumble runs, their notoriously short Royal Rumble runs. I mean, Butch and Luke were going to the Royal Rumble and they'd be out within a matter of minutes. They, I think, held the records for the shortest Royal Rumble runs of all time. Also, the four Doinks match where they teamed McMahon on a mission to take on the Head Shrinkers and Bastion Booger and Bam Bam Bigelow at Survivor Series 1993. And the one good match I actually remember from them was WrestleMania 5 that they had with the fabulous Rougeau brothers. Now, that was just their WWF run, and that was from 88 to 96, I think. But other fans, especially when they got into the Hall of Fame in 2015, other fans would say, well, they were a more serious team before they got to the World Wrestling Federation. And that's true. When they were known as the Sheep Herders in the mid 70s, when they broke in, uh, first with Grand Prix Wrestling in Montreal, then in Puerto Rico, and especially in Stampede Wrestling with Stu Hart. They were a brutal team. They were even brutal when uh, in the mid 80s when they wrestled the Fantastics in Jim Crack Promotions. I mean, they were one of the most brutal and bloodiest tag teams. And in those days, especially in Puerto Rico, you had to in the Puerto Rican territory, you had to be brutal. That was the bloodbath era. That was the era of Abdullah the Butcher, Bruiser Brody, and Carlos Colon. If you see their heads now, uh, Abdullah the Butcher is all carved up. Carlos Colon is all carved up, and the Bushwhackers at that time, known as the Sheep Herders, the Pastoreros in Spanish, were no different. They were a brutal, brutal team. You know, all bloodied up, all scarred up. Same thing, just massive bloodbath. And I was shocked by that because, again, when they came into the World Wrestling Federation, they were sanitized. Vince McMahon made them into a kiddie act. He completely did them 100% different than what they were done in the territory era. But I go back and look at some of those older matches that they had in Australia, in New Zealand, of course, which was their home country. They started off as the Kiwis in the mid 70s. Before they became the Sheep Herders, they were known as the Kiwis. They and Their sheep herder matches in Jim Crockett, brutal, brutal, man. Just crazy, crazy stuff. Bloodbaths. They don't really show a lot of that on the WWE network, but they prefer in the WWE to remember them as they knew them in the WWE. They were the Bushwhackers. Oh, they would uh, they would do these funny things with Mean Gene Oakland. I think there's one where they're like hunting with Mean Gene, and they have him in a bush out in the wild in New Zealand somewhere. And they even achieved mainstream success by appearing on an episode of Family Matters in 1994. They actually, I just licked the face of Carl Winslow and Steve Urkel. So yeah, they were a part of our childhood growing up as a kid, that golden era. And I hate to see guys like that, you know, die because I mean, we can look back on the wrestling today and say again, it used to be better. It's not as good as it once was, especially when it comes to acts like the Bushwhackers. Man, the Bushwhackers. I mean, to the people growing up in the territory era, they might not have liked them. They might thought, oh, these are cheap imitation of them. This is not who they really were. Kind of like Dusty Rhodes with the polka dots, or Kerry Von Erich with being Texas Tornado. But still, us as kids, that we didn't know about the territory era. At least I didn't. I only knew about WWF and a little bit of WCW, but they were going from WCW by the time I started watching in '93. You know what I mean? They were synonymous with WWF, and they were funny. You know, they were a funny tag team. You know, they wore the camouflage pants, and I didn't even know anything about New Zealand at that time. You know, I couldn't even point to you anywhere on the map where New Zealand was. Only thing I knew about New Zealand was the Bushwhackers were from there. You know, and so uh, uh, they educated me to some degree on their country. Did I think that every person in their country was a toothless guy that acted like a buffoon and goes all the time? Maybe I did, maybe I didn't. But anyway, rest in peace to Bushwhacker Luke. Um, while they weren't never tag team champions, they weren't on the level with, say, the Hart Foundation or the Rockers or the Legion of Doom or the Steiner brothers. They were a formidable tag team in their own lane, in their own way. So, uh, and they have the distinction of going from one of the most brutal tag teams in the history of professional wrestling and one of the most bloodiest tag teams in the history of wrestling to going to one of the most sanitized and kid versions. It would be kind of like turning Kevin Sullivan into a cuddly bear. You know what I mean? That kind of thing. So rest in peace to Bushwhacker Butch, and condolences to his family. Wow. You know, and it seems like everywhere on TMZ, wrestling is popping up no matter what. Love you guys. Peace.